yields. The chair will now recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank each of you. I will be praying that you have God's favor and wisdom in doing your important work. It's hard to listen to, and your written testimonies were something I wish everybody would be aware of, but I wouldn't recommend reading for everyone, you know. Look, Ms. Hakes, in your written testimony, you mentioned further resources are needed to recognize the signs of a sex offender conspiring to act, and I wonder if you'd elaborate here on what those resources would, where would they would go, or how we would enhance training, I guess, of law enforcement to recognize that?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Yes, and what I was referring to was the kind of training that lots of law enforcement gives. I'm sure Detective Beaver has done this himself. I train schools, charity organizations, law enforcement all around the world on something called grooming. And that is where you can recognize, there are recognizable methods of grooming children to ensure the conspiracy of silence and the cooperation of their own abuse. There are signs of child victimization that can be recognized and that are known around the world to professionals, like those sitting at the table, that you can train teachers, parents, children, most importantly children, whether that is in schools, whether that is in churches, whether that is law enforcement going to visit them at the Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or soccer, whatever their activities are. Those people should all be receiving that kind of sophisticated training that allows them to observe the signs that an offender is grooming a child. Now, for children who are being abused at home, which, as Ms. Pittman noted earlier, the vast majority of children who are sexually abused by someone in their circle of trust, and oftentimes someone at home. There aren't necessarily any grooming signs, but there may very well be signs of child victimization that can be recognized by teachers, coaches, counselors, and others, and they should be trained on those so that they can hopefully intervene before that child is victimized for a long period of time.
Thank you for that. Detective Beaver, one complaint I hear from sheriffs back in Louisiana is the issue with processing and then instructing sex offenders on what their registration requirements are. And I wonder, in your experience, if you would have any ideas on how to make that process maybe more streamlined or make it more clear to those who are registered what the requirements are.
I can speak to the Commonwealth of Virginia. For the Virginia State Police is in charge of the sex offender registry and keeping checks on the sex offender registry. I would say that they meet with them constantly, and through my experience, they lay out every bit of what is needed from them. I'm not sure if they hand them literature as far as what needs to be done, but I would recommend, if that does not exist, that a step-by-step process and where they fit on the sex offender registry and what their responsibilities are as a now citizen back in society.
Yeah, I get maybe every state differs. In Louisiana, I think, at least in the jurisdictions we checked on, they actually hand the sex offender a copy of the federal law, which most wouldn't understand, what that is. The idea would be to enhance compliance, and so if there's a way to streamline that somehow, or put it in a vernacular, or put it in, common parlance, I guess, so that they know exactly what's required, then when we're holding them accountable, it helps,
I know the state troopers often have a roundtable with he sits down with the sex offenders in that respective jurisdiction, and they have a roundtable, is my understanding of what takes place. And it's that in-face approach, that explaining to them where not to go, not what to do, and really I think literature breaking it down more than just a federal code would help.
Thank you, appreciate that. Mr. Sheehan, I've got just maybe 50 seconds or so. Does your organization currently communicate any information or update the state and local agencies that oversee absconded offenders of your specific efforts in apprehending non-compliant sex offenders?
So in 2006, after the Adam Walsh Act was enacted, we at the center created a sex offender tracking team. That group of analysts specifically works with local, state, tribal, and federal law enforcement, primarily United States Marshal Service, to assist as they investigate non-compliant registered sex offenders. Since that time, we have helped in more than 75,000 investigations.
Wow. Thank you all.